This session is called Principles of the Game. It's easy to actually start with what it's not. It is not off the shelf, here's how to attack, here's how to enter the circle, here's how to score goals sort of session. It is trying to help us to look at hockey through a slightly different lens. We can be guilty as coaches at looking at hockey in a sense of being easy and difficult. There's definitely a continuum there. And there's another continuum which I would prefer us to look at between simple and complex. We all play the same game, we all coach the same game, and importantly, the language that we use can often be quite varied, even though we're playing the same game. So if a player goes into a club, they hear a certain use of language. If a player goes into a school, they hear a certain use of language. And then importantly, if a player gets into the talent pathway, there may be another use of language there, even though we're all talking about the same thing. There's definitely lots of jargon out there, and this piece around principles will help us all look at hockey through the same lens. To start the session, we're going to show a 5-minute video. Whilst the video plays, take down some notes about any of the key phrases or words that the guys in the video use. It'd be really interesting to see how you reflect. This is a story of the journey that the sport is going through at the moment.
We are trying to go away from a mechanistic way of developing players to something that actually represents how people develop, how people learn, and that's much more organic. It's not as linear, it's not a simple case of do X, you'll get Y, and therefore creating a pathway that reflects the way that people learn and develop. You are seeing that approach have its impact within the way we design our pathway and the way we change and adapt our pathway. As part of that, we've also put an enormous emphasis on the how people coach to create a better learning environment. Whereas I feel previously we put a lot of focus on the what, we're now trying to shift that emphasis more so to the how to coach, how to create a learning environment.
I think what we're asking of coaches is we're saying more organic, we're saying more fluid, we're saying more reflective of the game. We are not saying that as a coach you're a passive bystander. We're saying there needs to be a huge amount of thought, preparation, planning going into your session where you're thinking about the themes, the outcomes, the areas that you're working on, but you're thinking about kind of how am I going to construct it, how's this going to be a fantastic fun session, how are all my players going to be involved at the same time, how are they going to go away passionate about the game. And your time and effort as a coach is about the preparation and planning that you do in that, thinking very carefully about, and almost as you deliver the session, you're more of a bystander. You're obviously kind of interjecting at points, giving key coaching points, giving some of the technical direction where it's needed. But young players are getting a fantastic amount of time on the ball, they're inspired, they're turning up, they want to play hockey, they don't want to stand in lines and queue and dribble and that side of things, they want to play the game. People like this idea of a very clear syllabus. I'm going to be working with 12-year-olds and this year I'm going to focus on this, and then when I've done this I'm going to stop focusing on this and then I'm going to do this. And actually the game is very complex and we need to make sure that, you know, it's not I'm going to work on V-drags this year or for these sort of sessions and then I'm going to do this and then I'm going to do this. It's understanding the fluid nature of the game and therefore the continual themes, the themes that you know link the whole way through, whether you're an 8-year-old or a senior.
So our game is it was perceived as a very highly technical game, and I would concur with that. There's a huge amount of intricate technique needed. So where does our coaching philosophy, our session design, our talent development philosophy fit with that view of the game?
That's an interesting question. Over the past 12, 18 months we've done a lot of work and we're really trying to shift a philosophical understanding of what good coaching, what good talent development and what good practice design looks like. Just thinking about that's our priority at the moment, and all the work that we've been doing through coach education, through coach development, through CPD that's on offer has been focused on that. What we also accept and understand as hockey is there are some fundamental basics basic technicals, which we as a governing body haven't given a huge amount of. We've kind of retracted that in the short term. The important bit for us moving forwards over the next 12, 18 months is that we really grasp this effective understanding of talent development, effective understanding of practice design, and we as a sport are recognised by other team sports across Europe, across the world for doing that really well. There are some really key technical pointers, and we've kind of held back on them as a little bit as a governing body while we really try and get this area right. What we are also doing at the same time as developing this area of work is beginning to build some technical pointers which we'll also be sharing with the hockey world. But from our perspective, to start with, we've got to get this practice design, effective talent development right, and that will have huge return on for us, and then we'll be building in more technical direction, technical pointers.
It's very difficult for people, I feel, to stop and actually examine why they do what they do, what history has gone before them. And so, because this is a relatively big change, people's natural reaction is to say, well, I was coached like this was my environment. However, what I would really stress is that all of the work we have been doing is backed by considerable amounts of research into how people learn, how people develop, and considerable research into people within a team sport context of how they effectively become world-leading players. So it isn't sort of some whim, it's very much based on hard science, sort of empirical, longitudinal understanding of how people develop and how they learn. I mean, if you take one of the concepts of the golden thread, the sort of repetition without repetition, you can very quickly build a session that looks at a tactical part of the game and set it up in such a way then the athletes explore the different solutions to that tactical challenge. It could be as simple as you've got to keep the ball 10 times and you literally put them in a space and you say the challenge is here, you've got to keep the ball 10 times and it's 3 versus 3, and go and explore what that takes, rather than as the coach sort of tactically writing out, I want you to make the pitch big and make the space available big. You can literally set up the problem and let the athletes explore the solutions. You can then evolve that, so now not only have you got to keep it 10 times, but within those 10 passes the ball has actually got to travel into an attacking zone at least 3 times. So now they're exploring whether they can go forward in that time whilst also exploring the concept of retaining the ball. So what we're doing there is having lots of repetition without repetition, i.e. lots of touches of the ball, lots of decisions around a particular framework. Can I go forwards here? Can I retain the ball here? And as a result, what you're building is adaptable and self-organising players. And those adaptable self-organising players are able to step into an ever-changing context in the game and execute this depending on whatever the context is in front of them, rather than creating sessions which devolve decision making or always giving the solutions to the athletes and actually therefore not equipping our young players to be able to be highly skillful, adaptable players of the future.
It's a really interesting video, probably a lot to take in. One of the main things though that I've spotted throughout that was the importance of the inspiring learning environments that we as coaches have to try to create. This has been brought to life through the golden thread, or how to coach. Of course we want sessions to be fun, we want every player to get lots of touches on the ball, we want it to look something like the game so that there is constant decision making, and it's that idea of stretch for every individual within the session, which is really, really tricky to try to get that challenge for everyone. And often it's said if a session is going really, really well, there's probably something wrong because the guys have probably got it, they understand, and it's maybe a wee bit too easy for them. So sometimes I think it's important to remember this idea of 50-50 success versus failure within your training sessions, just to get that environment completely right. But the how to coach via our golden thread is clearly a really important message. So the sport is clearly on a journey, and the important thing to remember here is that coaches are a critical part of that journey. There's still a huge piece still to come around skill development, but coaches play a crucial role. You'll see on the screen some of the strategy points that we're trying to embed through coach development. Importantly, we need to agree a coaching philosophy across GB. This session is a huge part of that, and we also need to bridge the technical knowledge gap across talent and performance coaches, and again that's why you're listening into this session. Another slide just to provide some context. Great Britain Hockey does know what it wants from talent. There is an understanding of what the end in mind is. Here you see on the screen just a number of characteristics that we're looking to develop through the inspiring learning environments that we as coaches can create. But by no means are we saying, well, tonight we're going to work on creativity. It doesn't work like that. There's a simple model that I use quite often called why, how, what. So if you bear with me, the why is probably our understanding of the game, is our principles of the game, sort of what we're here to talk about today. Our how is our golden thread, these inspiring learning environments that we set up, making sure that it's fun, etc., as we've already talked about. And our what is probably the big piece around skill development. And we have national development themes at the minute. Those help to categorise certain areas about being in possession and not being in possession. So those are great. But clearly the sport is on an ongoing journey to develop this in time, but we do know what the end in mind is. So all in all, I think we're agreeing that we're playing the same game, we're coaching the same game. If we can start using similar language about understanding the game, then this will be really helpful. Quick task. Describe to yourself, what does a 4v4 game look like with 8-year-olds? It's really interesting when you think about it. And for me, you could begin to get into this idea of putting yourself in their lens. Don't put yourself in the lens of the coach standing at the side. Actually get in their head and look at hockey through their lens. It's really messy, and I know myself thinking back to that sort of level of hockey, simply whenever the ball came anywhere near me as a player, you just shovel it in one direction, usually towards where you want to score and away from where you don't want them to score. So pretty much the basic fundamentals of any invasion game is to head in that direction to try and score and stop them from heading in this direction to let them score. And I'm no boxing expert, but if you were to apply the same principles or the same idea again to boxing, hit or be hit, attack versus stopping their attack. So it's interesting when you think about these invasion games, more so like football and rugby and basketball and the likes. We're all quite similar. Principles are generally very, very similar. It's an interesting thought. You'll see here we've broken down skill into 3 areas. By no means is this a critical slide, it's just to try to bring it to life in a different way. You could say there are movement skills in hockey, which is moving around the pitch and positioning, but also how we utilise the stick. There are definitely perceptual skills, and this is a big one for us as coaches. We're responsible for providing that prior experience to the player through contextual practice. I'm going to use this phrase quite a bit moving forward about changing the picture, or what does the picture look like in the player's head. We as coaches are responsible for providing lots of different types of pictures through our practice design so that our players can make decisions off the back of that. It's really, really important. And finally, this piece is most definitely a conceptual piece. The principles of the game, understanding the game, are conceptual, but really, really critical and important to simplify the language that we use. Linked to that, creating prior experience, the top phrase is something that I like quite a bit. I think potentially through our old coach education, coaching might have been largely about correcting technical faults. However, if we could just spin that on the head, potentially coaching should be about creating creativity, for want of a better word, to allow players to have more options with regards to skills that they can utilise. And linked to the previous strategic messages put up on the board, we want to create scholars of the game. We want to create scholars of the game within our players and of course within ourselves as coaches. The principles of the game helps us to begin to do that even more so and embed that across the sport. If the FIH made a radical decision to change hockey to 9v9 instead of 11v11 and all things pretty much remain the same, the principles of the game would very much be the same. This is our true north, our guide to what we're all trying to achieve. So back to this slide. If we understand the game, why are we here? What are we trying to do? We're trying to score there. We're trying to stop you from score here. And we deliver it in inspiring learning environments, or how, brought to life through golden thread, providing lots of stretch, lots of creativity through decision making. and we deliver the what of really good skill development, all this combined will help us get to the end in mind of what do we want to achieve through talent development. So if I take you down a journey of a small story, this principles of the game piece is this true north, our guide in terms of our direction that we want to go in. It is like walking out into this field of long grass. We as coaches are responsible for taking the players out on this journey every session, every cycle within a talent pathway. We take them out on this journey over and over again. The randomness of our environments through our golden thread to create all these different looking pictures to make decisions from is our role to support the players and their understanding of that. What that will do in time, with our compass in our hand, it will broaden the path of skill development. I.e., players will say, I've been on this journey before, I've seen this picture before, and I now have a number of options that I can choose to utilise through my skill development to maximise a situation. So for example, I've been in this tight space before under pressure, and I know what to do to try to get out of it successfully, because I understand the principles of the game, because I know what I am trying to do, and I know what my teammates are trying to do, and what we are trying to do going forward together. I think it's also important that the principles of the game are really, really key for people who are off the ball, and that is obviously the majority of players within our teams. So they actually see a situation, can see a player in a moment in time, and can support having the knowledge of, I've seen this picture before and I know how to support because I know what we are trying to do when we are in possession of the ball. The biggest challenge for coaches here is really just to keep concentrating on practice design. How am I going to create the appropriate environments for everybody in my session to get enough of these variable pictures, to make enough decisions, to get enough of that prior experience? That's our challenge here. We have to simplify all these messages and make it easy for ourselves and therefore our players. But that's still a real big challenge for us as coaches, because that's the definition of good coaching. Can I take this group on a journey of getting better with regards to their skill? Do I understand what the end in mind is, and what is my function to help that happen? For the purposes of trying to further bring to life the attacking principles of the game, I'm going to ask you to think about 3 moments of time. And these words are by no means important, and it's just to try to frame in a nice simple way. There's 3 moments potentially in time that you could suggest whenever I'm on the ball or we are on the ball as a team. Moments of advantage, and what I would describe that as is a really good looking picture, whatever that might mean to you. But this is a really good looking situation, we need to take advantage of it. The flip side of that is non-advantage or disadvantage. This picture doesn't look good to me, what are we going to do? And here's the sort of answers to get out of this really tough situation. And then there's somewhere in the middle about a neutral sort of ground of not quite sure whether this is a good time or a bad time. I need to potentially change the picture to see where we can go. Obviously, by trying to make it an advantageous situation, change it into that. So there's 3 moments in time. So just try to frame your thoughts around those moments about what does hockey look like whenever I'm in one of those moments. Let's start with that non-advantage, that not so good, that tricky looking picture. Where it's really difficult to see what's going to come ahead to keep ourselves going forward to try and score. And let's just see what happens. So let's look at the picture. In this brief moment of time, and obviously these moments change second by second by second by circumstance, but in this moment in time, it's not a great looking picture. It's not very advantageous. I'm being marked, my head's down, I'm in a tight corner of the pitch, players are all being marked, there's a spare player there as well. This isn't a great looking picture, I think we would all agree. Obviously there's always a chance of how do I turn it into a good looking picture, but right now this is pretty tight. I'm in a difficult situation. I need to fall back on certain principles to know what I should do on the ball and what my teammates should be trying to do to help me out. But ultimately here, what has he done? He's tried to keep the ball and recognises that he needs to get to another space. Not just himself, but the ball needs to get to another space to be a bit more of a restart of a more positive situation somewhere else. And in coaching language, what do we call this? It's retention. He's trying to keep the ball and move it somewhere else. So again, take a moment and describe in your own mind words that you feel best describe this moment in time. So to flip that on its head, let's look at a moment of advantage, a real advantageous, good looking picture. Check out this video now. What's he thinking in this moment in time? Looking around his shoulders, what is he thinking? If I get the ball, what's on? Even before our defender passes the ball, it's a good looking picture in my opinion, but certainly once the forward receives the ball, in the context of that moment in time, it is a really good looking picture, really advantageous for us. Regardless of the skills deployed to pass and to run hard and to go to floor to score, this conceptually is a good looking picture. So therefore, what do? What are our actions? We go forward. And just to reiterate, it's about the context, which we cannot set up a drill for. This moment in time is unique. However, we see many like it. And it's our job, as I've said previously, to try and create environments that look something like the game, to look a little like this picture, so that we can work on the skills to execute a situation similar to this. So again, take a moment and describe in your own mind words that you feel best describe this moment in time. And the last of the three is this moment in time, which is right in the middle. On the screen earlier, we called it neutral. What are we trying to do in this moment in time? What are we trying to do whenever it's neither really obviously positive and also not very negative? It is probably best to try to describe it as trying to get to a positive advantage looking picture, feeling our way, exploring what there is in front of us. And again, similar to before, what words come to mind if you were to describe this situation? The skills utilised, the actions of the player on the ball, other players in the same team. What words come to mind? To finish this session off, I would probably suggest that you should go back through the video, watch some of those clips, start, stop, pause throughout, and try to just take the time to think about what you see. Here you will see the attacking principles of the game, remembering that the principles aim to simplify the complex by embedding an understanding of skill development and the game itself. The principles of the game will generate a common language in how coaches and players talk about and understand hockey, producing a natural byproduct of scholars of the game. If we accept, whenever we attack, that the principle of the game is to take the best option to go forward and score, we recognise that we need players who have good, robust skills, passing, carrying, eliminating, etc. These skills should all be developed with the purpose of taking the best option to go forward and score. Notice that the three areas that we have defined here reflect the previous slide regarding moments in time. Take your time to reflect on what these mean to you. The what of skill development will emerge from the principles of the game. The what to do will be coupled with the how to do it. The what, continuously explored through the context of the game, will allow deeper understanding for both on the ball and off the ball moments in time. This ongoing journey of developing the what will in turn lead to the evolution of the national development themes. These environments will offer, invite, encourage players to explore the opportunities for action related to the principles of the game they wish to focus on. Decisions to execute a skill will come from triggers and cues in the environment. Practice will look something like the game to ensure that what the players are seeing and feeling is in context. Lots of decisions will be needed in this learning environment while still ensuring to bring about lots of random variation in the types of decisions being made. Players will constantly self-organise against instabilities. Not enough instability, players have nothing to organise against. Whereas too much instability, players will not effectively process the environment and select the right skillful action. Take your time now to reflect on what has been shown within this resource. Remembering from the start that this was not an off-the-shelf, here's how to attack, here's how to enter the circle, here's how to score resource. Take this language now from this and apply it within your coaching sessions. Reflect upon how does it fit, how does it work, how does it help you to introduce national development themes and work on the skills within those areas. Finally, please remember the Hockey Hub. Lots of resources similar to this can be found there. Lots of ideas around practice design. If you like Twitter, please follow us at Coach and Inspire.